Welcome to the training video for Cellaca 2.0 software. This video is intended for users who already have Cellaca experience. We will not cover AOPI concepts or how to use the Cellaca plate. As with the previous version, the software is launched using the icon on the desktop or in the Start menu. Once the software opens, the home screen will appear as you see on the screen here. In the upper right-hand corner, if the instrument is connected and functioning properly, you should see a green box with a thumbs up symbol. On the left-hand side, we see our workflow tabs with Acquire, Data, and Manage. To begin to acquire an image, we'll go to the Acquire tab. The first step in acquiring new data is inserting the plate into the instrument. Up at the top, we have our orange Eject button. To open the stage, we click on the Eject button, we place the plate onto the stage, and then click on Load to bring that back into the instrument. Our next step is to name our sample. Compared to the previous software, here, if we don't change the name of our sample, it'll simply be called New Sample and then have a timestamp indicating when it was imaged. I'm going to just choose a random name, Bill's sample. The next step is to select the assay that we'll be using to acquire and count our cells. These will be with acridine orange and propylium iodide. Coming down here, we can select the wells that are included in the scan. If I already have cell names in a CSV file, I can import them at this time by finding the CSV file, clicking Open, and we can see that it's auto-populated. However, for this example, I don't want to name the cells, and indeed, I will be reducing the number of wells counted. The next step is to choose whether or not we want to auto-export any sets of data at the end of the run. We can export raw images, colorized images, a well-level CSV file, which is similar to the data.txt that you remember from the old software, an object-level CSV, which is a large file that you would use to import data into flow cytometry software, and then an archive of the data set for long-term storage. Then we can click on to preview to see the preview screen. Under the preview screen, we have our plate map where we can select on the well that we'll be imaging, and our image display area here. So we can zoom in by using the scrolling gesture on the trackpad or using the scroll wheel on a mouse. And we can see that we have our dark membrane with bright center for our bright field image. If we'd like to inspect the exposure time for the fluorescent image for channel 1, we can click on FL to activate the fluorescence. And we see our green cells, our acridine orange positive cells. And then do the same thing for our channel 2, where we look at the fluorescence image and we see our PI stained cells. If needed, we could increase the exposure time for each of those channels by simply typing in a new number. These are simulated images, so no change will be reflected in the image. If needed, you could perform either a manual focus using the up and down arrows or an autofocus. Most of the time, assays are set to perform an autofocus in the bright field at each well, so this may not be necessary. Once we're satisfied with our settings, we can click on the Count button, and that brings us over to our counting image. As with the previous software, the colors of the wells will change depending on what stage they are in the counting. Here, once the well has been acquired, it will be green, and when it has been counted and stored, it'll turn blue. One of the nice things about the newer version of the software is you can begin to inspect the image once it's been acquired. Up at the top, we have buttons for our bright field image, fluorescence 1 and fluorescence 2. So we can turn those on and off by clicking on them, and then we can zoom in to see what cells have been circled So anything that's considered live is circled in green, anything that's considered dead is circled in red. The additional button zoom, that turns on and off the indicator in the bottom right hand corner of the image, showing us how far we've zoomed in. And then counted turns off the circles indicating what has been counted. For each well that's highlighted right now, you will see a simple report. So here we are in A10, and then the number of live objects, dead objects, and total objects, along with the concentration, the cell size, and the viability. If we click on all wells, we can see everything that has been counted so far. So we have well A10, A11, A12, B11, B12, and now that it's completely completed, the order is in the proper order. So we now have B10, B11, and B12. If we were counting a full plate, the report generated here would show A1 to A12 and then B1 to B12 instead of the reverse order. At this point, we can see what has been exported automatically. So we haven't asked the software to export any of these file formats automatically. To export a report, we go down here and click on the orange export button and then choose the type of report that we would like. The Excel and CSV reports have the same data, just a different type of different file type. So we can see what that looks like. We'll export the Excel file. And then we can also export a PDF and have that auto open as well. And we'll see here that it'll indicate that they've been exported, and then a link to the folder that we had designated for export. Right. So in both cases, you can see that what is being reported is slightly different in the PDF report, which you can define, and the Excel report, which you can also define. So here in the Excel report, for each entry, we have a live count, the concentration, the size, the dead count, the concentration, and the size. Right. So these are completely customizable. Similarly, with the PDF, we can have our table of objects, and then things like a cell size histogram, and maybe even a viability gauge. In this version of the software, all of your scans are stored locally in a database that resides on the instrument computer. To look at old data, we can go to the Data tab, and we'll see a list of all the scans that have been done on our instrument. So for example, we can look at this Annexon 5 PI data set and double click on it. And we can see our results here. So this is a different style of report template where we have additional information about the number of cells that reside in the different quadrants. So as with Annexon 5 PI, generally we're plotting Annexon 5 intensity along the x-axis, propydium iodide intensity along the y-axis. Cells that are in the upper left-hand corner are necrotic. Those that are in the bottom left-hand corner are live. Bottom right-hand corner are early apoptotic. Upper right-hand corner are late apoptotic. And so we can reflect those numbers here along with their percentages as well. The cell counting assays that are stored on the instrument can be viewed under the Manage tab. We have assays, cell types, and report templates. Assays refer to cell types and to report templates. Of the various different kinds of assays, we have the Nexcelom assays that come with the instrument. They will have a Nexcelom symbol next to them. Those cannot be edited, but they can be used as a template for starting to form your own assays. Unlocked custom assays that you've generated, and then locked assays that you've also generated. The check mark here indicates whether or not those assays show up in the drop-down menu under the Acquire tab. To begin to edit an assay, we can, for instance, choose an Exelom assay. Let's choose this AOPI primary cells assay here that we want to use as a starting point. So we can double click on that assay. And then we'll notice when we look at all the parameters that everything is grayed out because we don't have permission to change them. This is a system assay. But we're going to use this as a starting point. So we will save this as Bill's new AOPI assay. Save that. Now we have the ability to change what we're doing. Under each little box, there should be some text that indicates what we're doing. So this is a 2 fluorescent channel assay. We're interested in viability. We will not be using the bright field as a mask. Our green channel is live. Our red channel is dead. We will do an autofocus at every well using the bright field image to do the autofocus. And by default, we will be doing 25 microliters of cells, 25 microliters of AOPI. So that's a dilution factor of 2. For channel 1, we'll be doing acridine orange. 150 milliseconds is a good exposure time. We'll be exposing with blue light and collecting green light for the emission. Similarly, for the red channel, we'll be doing propytimiodide. That's a little bit long of an exposure, so I'll set that to 300. And again, exciting with green light and collecting red light. Let's quickly go back over to channel 1. Here, we can select what cells we'll be using to do the assay. So I think I would like to use not a built-in cell type, but one that I've defined myself. So I can come down here and I'll select my Bill AO cells for the green channel. And then for channel 2, I think I'll select some custom cell type that I've chosen, maybe a PI. Okay. Going further down for reports, templates, and automatic exports, we can see that for our display template, we have a display template that we can choose, and I think the default is fine. Again, for the export template, we can choose something here, just the default. And then for the print template, again, we'll just choose the default. So if we would like to always export an Excel file every time we run this assay, we can click on Excel here and either have it auto open or not. And similarly, we can have a PDF report generated for every time that we run the assay. But I'm not interested in that. I really only want to export the Excel file. So I can save this and go back to our list of assays. And then we have our Bill's new AOPI assay here. It is unlocked. It was created today, and it will show up in our drop-down menu. If I would like to see what the settings are for my AO cells, I can search for the name. So I already knew that it was Bill's AO cells. So I typed in Bill up here, and that filtered through the various different cell types that I have. Double click on there to view the parameters. And we have on the top our bright field parameters and our fluorescence parameters. So these look pretty good to me. A pretty wide cell diameter, since we're counting nuclei here, that works very well for lots of different cells. I do want the advanced bright field fluorescence mode to use the bright field image to help decluster. And then a threshold of 15% for the threshold, and this TH factor of 0.4 is good for declustering. So I'm not going to change that. I'm just going to go back. I'm happy with those cell types. Now, let's say that I'm really only interested in exporting the live numbers of cells when I have an Excel export, because I don't care how many dead cells I have. So I can click into Report Templates, and I'm looking for an export style template. So I can go up and search for export. And then I'll choose the default for the AOPI assay, which is default export 2FL viability. And double click on that to open it. And we can see our report generator. So this is a default assay and we can't edit it. So I'll be saving it as something new. So Bill's export template. We can see that it's for exporting. I'll save that. One of the nice things about this software is we can link the data to an existing data set to see what the style of reporting will look like. So I'll go ahead and choose this new sample here, select that, and in the upper right hand corner we can click on the preview button to see what that will look like when it's exported to Excel. So it looks pretty good, but we're not interested in any of this information about the dead cell count. Here we can edit what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and begin to select all the cells in the header that we don't want. We're not interested in the dead cell information. We'll delete those. And then for the actual data entries themselves, select the cells that I'm not interested in, press the delete button, and now click onto the cell just to shrink it down a little bit. Click the little box, drag it over to an appropriate size, do the same thing on the bottom, click into the cell, grab the little box, and move it over. Now we can look at the preview, see what we have got, and that's exactly what I'm looking for in my Excel export, just the live cell information, count, concentration, and viability. That looks great. So go ahead and save and back. For more in-depth information, please refer to the user manual that is in electronic form on the Cellaca computer. You can also get a copy and help by emailing support@nextlom.com or within business hours calling the phone number displayed here to talk to a person. Thank you very much.